on the intercom, the dude that's like tells like yeah, the speaker says like Lewandowski scored, and they have to like shout like they say his first name and his last name, and then he's like Dante, and everyone in the stadium goes Pizza, and I was like, what does that mean? And he was like, that means you're wrong, and I was like,
Okay, welcome to Tinel Meetup number 19. My name is Petar, I am a front-end developer and part of the React team here at Locastic. So, let's begin. For those of you that don't know, Tinel means living room in our local dialect. So, we want you to feel like that, feel at home, grab a beer and enjoy yourself. This will be the final event of the 2018. We covered all sorts of topics from AR, esports, and so on and so forth. And none of those events would have been possible without the help of our partners. So, to start off, Marvi, our accommodation partner. Sara can give us a review later. Barba from our local lab brewery, which provides the beer. Bolcamora, arguably the best pizza in town. You'll be the judge of that, we'll see. Beaver on cakes. Well, Sara said she's here just for the cakes, so it's worth it, trust me. Split Tech City. They provide the stream for all the thousands watching on YouTube. Maybe you wondered if there is Uber in Split.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did you find a bug?
Yes, I found because the API is broken, but actually there is Uber in Split. There is Uber in Split and they are our sponsor. And Metacratia, our media partner. You can find it under Croatia Coastline, something like that. There's been, I don't know, 11 events this year, but we've saved the best for the last. Cherry on the top. The new React Way, last one by Sara Vieira. So if someone gets hooked up on React after the talk, you can come to her workshop tomorrow. It's an introduction to React, and there are still 4 spots left, so hurry up, guys. And that's it. Grab a beer and enjoy the talk. I'm very confused.
You can connect.
Oh, I'm missing the HDMI cable.
Yeah, it's here, or you can connect with the Apple TV.
Oh,
If you
okay.
want. We have that option also.
Great, everyone can see my really shitty desktop. Great. Okay, so first of all, I want to apologize for Uber not being on the website. They don't really update their website. They don't. I'll add that. Great, it works. This never works in the first try. Okay, so hi everyone. It's really nice to be here. I've never been to Croatia. This is really nice. Congratulations on the World Cup. That was great. Thanks. Fucking French people. And there's a live stream. Okay, cool. So I'm going to talk about React. Apparently there hasn't been a talk about React in the meetup, at least this year. So who in here is using React? Oh, okay, cool. So the rest of you are going to learn about React. Cool. Okay, so my really clickbaity title for this talk is like the new React way, a last classy one, because React handles a lot about classes, and I'll explain why I think this was like not a very good idea. So my name is Sara, as has been said. I'm a developer advocate at YLD. As in like for personal things, I'm really into horrible movies, like Sharknado and stuff. I don't know why. And as a true Portuguese person, I'm really into football because that's pretty much all we have. So, Uber dude, where are you from? Portugal, Ronaldo. Like, fuck off, man. You know how many times this has happened in my life? Way too many. Okay, so one thing about the JavaScript world and the React world is that React and JavaScript are constantly changing. It's good and it's fucking terrible. It's both. One of the new things that happened was hooks. And like to understand like what is so good about this thing, or so bad depending on if you like it or not, it's like, let's look at a class component. Do I have a clicky thing? Yeah. So, okay, so this is a class component in React. So this is the part that you actually return something. So this is the render function, and this is what it's called to actually throw something on the screen. So you have a lot of things inside of this. So the first thing that you see is the state. And this is basically, so in every application you have the state of the application. This is the state of each component, basically. And every time some of this changes, the render thing is triggered and like re-renders. So you have component in mounts, which is basically when the component mounts. Yeah. So you also have component in update, and component in update means that something in the state or the props has changed. Do you want me to turn off the light? Okay, cool. So that means that like something in the state, which is here, or the props, which is where you pass from like the parent, has changed. And in here, like you just basically say like, if this is different, then set the state to trigger another re-render. So what is the problem with this? So React relate a lot on lifecycle methods. So it relate a lot on like these random function names that they just gave, and it also relate a lot on classes. The problem with classes is that, like, first of all, there's all of these methods and there's still a lot more. So constructor is to say your state, but no one actually uses it. There's also component in mount, there's should component update, which you basically have to tell React, like, so I got this and I got this, should you re-render? Like, I feel like that should be his job, not ours. Component in update, there's also component will on mount, which is basically called if you like set up things that you need to clean up, and there's also render. Okay, so the problem is, JavaScript classes are not really like classes of like actual programming languages. I only know JavaScript, I have no idea why I said actual programming languages. So I'm not a real programmer. But the thing is, React classes are not actually JavaScript classes. So that gets kind of confusing, because they're not actually classes, it's just this random thing that they made up. So, like 2 months ago or something, there was a React conf and they announced hooks. So it's basically a new way to write React apps, which is not so reliant on classes, which are not actually classes. And it's basically like a more functional. So it basically only uses functions. So you never have to touch a class again. And everyone is happy about that. So basically, most of this talk is just going to be me live coding. So I have this app, which I'm going to get a chair for this because no one does this. This is very low, and I'm just going to get my back. It's going to be like, I'm getting old. So I have this app. Oh, I didn't open it in a new tab. Okay, so who watches Rick and Morty? Oh, there's a bug. It says the CSS bug here. Nice. Who watches Rick and Morty? No? Okay, cool. So there's a Rick and Morty API for everyone who doesn't know. There's an API for everything, by the way. And okay, so what this app is, it has 2 routes. And basically, when I type a character's name, so I can type Morty, and I can click on his name and go to this page, and it does this. And that's basically all that the app does. So I'm going to show you the code right now. Oh, crap. I never know how to turn off that thing. God damn it, Elizabeth. Oh, this is not what I wanted. So let me go to settings. Just real fast. There's nothing to do with the fact that I just got a website message. Also, welcome to my email. I don't read things. Does anyone know where this is? Like, without doing this dumb thing.
Press Alt in the hamburger menu.
Alt in the hamburger menu? Oh, okay. That doesn't, okay. Alt, okay. Okay, so no more WhatsApp messages here. Okay, so I have this index. So I'm using reach router just because I've never used it and it's nice. And so all of these classes are, just ignore this because I'm using tachyons because I have this thing that does not allow me to put anything that looks like shit on the internet in terms of CSS. So I use tachyons, which is this. I can show, or not. Tachyons, dependencies, tachyons. Beautiful. Okay, it's basically like it gives you like these components and you can build things with it. And always show toolbar. There we go. Okay, so I'm using tachyons and I just have these links and then I have this home page, and when the component mounts, so I set up the characters to be an empty array, and when the component mounts, user settings, size. I can see you squinting. Like real hard. So when the component mounts, I set the state of loading to be true so that when I come here, it does the loading thingy, and then I get all the characters, and then I set the state of loading to false, and I put the characters in so that you get the loading, and then when the loading is done, you get the characters. So if it's loading, I just return loading, and if it's not loading, it's just going to give you this input, and it's going to give you all of the characters. That these characters receive the search, and if I go to the components and I do characters, basically I have a console.log here. And besides that, I say that if search is different than the previous search, I want you to set the state. And this huge ass thing, what it does is that I go to the character's name, I put it to lowercase. This took me way too long to figure out the lowercase part. And if the name includes what you just searched for, also in lowercase, so you don't go like, return it. That's basically it. And then you just map all over them because it starts with an empty thing, so everything includes an empty thing, so it's fine. And also the chart thing, it just gets everything by default and just starts. Okay, so the idea is that I'm gonna update this to React Next and React DOM Next. So React at Next, and I'm gonna update this to React DOM at Next as well. I don't understand you, Croatian. I'm sorry. Okay, so, cool. So this is done. And so basically all that I did was just update to the latest version of React so that I have access to these new fancy things. You look very confused. And I'm gonna start with this, and because like it bubbles up all the changes that I'm gonna make, so it's easier if I just start like this. Okay, so first thing that we gotta do is that we have to just remove, this is the chart part, and so the first thing that I'm gonna do is like screw this component, and I'm gonna import 2 hooks, and one of them is use state, and the other one is use effect. Okay, cool. So this can go screw himself. So I'm just gonna do this and this. Oop, what? Nope. So close yet so far. There we go. And I'm gonna delete this. Okay, cool. So use state basically allows you to change the state of your component. So and it gives you back two things. It gives you the value and it gives you the function that you can call to change that value. So you go like so const loading, for example, and set loading is equal to use state. And in here you pass the default value. So the same thing that I did here. So I pass it to true. And you do the same thing for the character, which I think is like not written correctly. Is it? Probably. Oh, fuck. Google Chrome. Okay. Apparently I can't type things in Google Chrome. That's fine. And so let's do the same thing. So const character and set character. So basically you get the value, and the second thing is just the function that you can use. So use state, and this is going to be equal to an empty array. And now I can delete the state. Okay, cool. So we have a thing called component in mount. And component in mount runs on when the component mounts. Great, you're welcome. And so one thing that we want to do is that we want to actually still want to call this. So I'm going to get this and delete this. And I'm going to create a function called so const get data. And this function, what it's going to do is that it's going to get, so the props.id that I pass here. Yep. No, okay, this is passed automatically from the thing, never mind. And so I can put this here. And I say, this is the ID. Cool. What the fuck, code sandbox? And this is just ID. Cool. And this is an async function, which is basically a fancy way of doing like dems, and that's it. So in here, what we do is by default, you see that everything is kind of working because we get the loading spinner, and that's because we set this to true. And then one thing that you need to know about hooks is that they rely on the order that they're called. So the next thing that I need to do is set the characters, and only then can I set the loading to false. Otherwise, we're gonna get an error, and I'm gonna show you. Because I've been through this too. We've all been here. So I'm gonna set character, and I'm gonna set character equal to this. So basically all I need to do is this. And also going to set loading. So set loading equal to false. And I'm going to delete this. And if I reload this page, it never stops loading. Const get data equal. Oh, okay, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so now we actually need to call this when the component mounts, and that's what useEffect is for. So useEffect is called every time the component re-renders, basically, and which can be dangerous, but they have this like really weird thing that I'm going to show. So I'm just going to call get data, and I'm going to do this, and you cannot read property name of undefined, because, or like origin done, or the name of the origin comes inside of origin, and so since I set false to like set false first, it like assumes that it's not that it has the characters. So this actually like you need to do things like this, and then it's going to work. Amazing. I've been through this. Okay, I'm going to set the font size bigger. Font size 16 pixels. Maybe? Yes? No? It's exactly the same. Sorry. You look very hard. Okay, so useEffect is called every single time the component re-renders, which is kind of annoying because we don't want to call an API every time the component re-renders. So this actually gets a second parameter. And the parameter is like, it's an array of things that we want to like, so if I put a thing here like the ID, for example, this means that this useEffect will only run when the ID changes. And you're like, okay, that's cool, but that doesn't help us. It does, because if you pass an empty array, that technically never changes, and it'll only run once. I think this was not supposed to be a thing, but now it is. So this only runs the first time. You can also just pass a string like lol. You can just pass lol here, and since lol never changes, yeah, so that's a thing. Yeah, and so that's done, cool. So this page is working completely on hooks, and if I remove this, and I can come here to the project info, and I can open where this was forked from. And so if I go to char, this is what we had, and this is what we have now. So if I just toggle this return thing, okay, so it's basically this. Which I like it this way better because it's more functional, like you just call things that do things, and that's it. Okay, so next step, home. Great, nice talk. Okay, so now I'm gonna go to the components and I'm gonna go to the chars, and this is the one that does this weird ass thing. Okay, so this is to be called onComponent.update. So I'm gonna import, so I don't need component anymore, I do need use state, and I do need use effect. I know that would be faster if I just like wrote them, but I'm like, no. So export default, and I'm gonna create a class, function, sorry. And yep, and no, this is not needed, and this render function is not needed either. And it just, excuse me, it returns this. Okay, so we also get a prop, which is the chars, and so I'm gonna pass it like this here. So that's it, and I can delete this, because that part is done. And so what I did here was that I set the state to equal to the char. So this is because, so the thing is, when you want to filter on something, I had like what came from the top, and basically I set, every time I changed it, every time I changed something in the search thing, I set it to the state to like the filtered option, but I still needed like the full thing. So that's why I had the props. Okay, so I'm gonna say const, and I'm gonna get chars here, and set chars, and this is gonna be equal to use state, and the default one is just gonna be like whatever I get from above. So if I just comment this, nope. Default class, duplicate declaration, that makes sense. So characters, and set characters, and this is characters. Cool. So it works. If I do this, it does absolutely nothing. Great. Nice talk. Okay, so let's use effect again. So I'm going to say use effect, and every time this changes, what do I want to do? I want to set like basically this dot set state. So I want to get the new, so const, I'm going to create a const called new characters. And I'm going to say that these new characters are basically this, which I'm going to copy. There we go. So they're basically what comes from the props here. Sorry, and I also have the search that comes here. So this is what I actually type. And I can delete this. And I have no idea if this is going to work. It's not. Oh, because I'm not setting it. That makes sense. Okay, so now I call set characters. And equal to these new characters, basically. So the ones that I actually like typed. So if I type Rick, it now works. But if you add something else to this thing, it can change. It can. So one thing, this will run every time, but we only want to run it when the search changes. So when the user inputs something new, so we can just pass an array and set search in here. So if something else changes in the future, this like particular effect will never be triggered again. So it only triggers in that case. Okay, cool. So this part is working. It's actually going better than I expected, except the WhatsApp message. Okay, cool. So now let's go to the home page. That already has an error and I didn't even touch it. Oh, await is a reserved word. That makes sense. It is. Thanks. Okay, so let's delete this component because we don't need it. And I'm just going to create a function. So export default. And then we're going to have this. Okay, these new MacBook keyboards are shit. By the way. That's why. That's the only reason. And now I can also remove this render and this thing. And so what I'm doing here on change, I can just fix it right now. So since this is not a class anymore, I need to set it to something. So const on change. And so I just called on change in here. And instead of setting this state, I'm going to create the state things. So I'm going to import use state from React. And I'm going to say, am I missing something here? I don't think so. No, beautiful. Okay, so const value, which is the search. So I'm going to say search. I can do this. Search, and I'm going to say set search. And I'm going to call use state on this, and the default is just going to be this. So the reason I'm not setting to null is because ESLint complains. That's literally it. They say, like, you're not supposed to set the value of a thing to null. I'm like, okay, fine. And in here, I'm just going to say set search equal to e.target.value, and that's it. So So either target that value is like an HTML thing, so when you change something, it gets like the old event, and then it's just, the target is the DOM element, and the value is what you're typing in it. Why is this white? Should show me an error. It's not gonna, cool. Okay, so next step, we have characters. So let's do the same thing for characters. So this is characters, and I'm gonna do set characters. I have no idea if characters is well written, by the way. And this is an empty array, and I also have loading, so const, so loading, thanks, and set loading, and this is equal to use state, and the default is false. Okay, cool, so I can delete this. So on component in mount, we want to call all of this, cool, so we're going to create a function for it. So I'm going to say const get data. So the reason I'm creating a function, it's mostly because you can't return a promise and an effect, and it's also like a good idea to just like split your things and not call like functions. Like don't call like things that are async like this. So this is a function, and so this function does this, and now I'm going to reload the page. Oh no, I can just do this probably, and this will work, I think. Nope, fuck you. There we go. There, beautiful. Because this is async. So I just wanted an error. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is set loading to true. Oh, someone saw this. Set loading to true. And the reason I'm setting loading to true here is just so that you see that it really relies on like how you call it, basically. It's like, I don't need to, I can just set it to true here. And then I get all the characters, and then, like I said, I first like set characters equal to this, that I'm just going to copy and paste because I'm lazy, and then I set loading to false. And I'm going to use effect that I didn't import. Use effect, and I'm going to say, okay, use effect, cool, and I just want this to be called on component in mount, so I'm just going to pass an empty array because that makes perfect sense, and I'm going to say get data. So on component in mount, it's going to get the data, and I screwed up, it's this way, and you get everything. Amazing. Okay, so if I type Jerry, it should work. Yay! Okay, so a couple of things. This is basically nothing. How do I explain this? So there's a thing in React called a fragment, because for a long time, and still up to this date, you can't do this. So you can't return two HTML elements, basically. You gotta be wrapped in something. And for a very long time, we all wrapped it in divs, and that was terrible. So now they made this thing called the fragment, or you can just like the shorthand is this, which isn't kind of weird. But this basically, it only tells React like this is an array, but don't render anything to the DOM, so that everything is not just a div. And I'm just gonna format this code because this is kind of annoying me. There we go, beautiful. And the only last thing that I'm gonna show you is that this utils thing that has the fetch. As you can see, I just like get this Rick and Morty API, and I just return the JSON. In this case, the JSON.results. Okay, cool. So if I put this site to site again, so this is the home page, and I'm gonna close this return. This is not the home page, but this is. And I'm gonna close this return, and I'm also gonna format. Okay, cool. So this is what we had, and this is what we have. It all depends on what you prefer most, basically. I like it. It's nice. Okay, so I will give you the link to all of these slides that have all of the links to Code Sandbox as well. Cool. So let's go a little bit over like the functions that I actually used. Yes. Okay, so the first one is use state. It returns a stateful value and a function to update it. So like I said, so here's a Code Sandbox that basically just uses set state. And so on change, I basically say set city, which I use from set state, and I set the default value to split. And so this just renders the city in here. So there is no like this.state.something or this.props.something. And this is all that you do. I'm just going to put this in here so that you can see both of them. Beautiful. There we go. And if I change this to London, if I can type London, there we go. It changes to I am in London, so Berlin. And yeah, so this is what useState does. And the reason why it's in this type of notation is because if you set something like this type of notation, so this is what we're most used to see. So city and set city equals to lol. Great. So this is what we're most used to see, but the reason it's not set this way is because this way this needed to be the name that they gave in the actual React code. So when they exported this use state, they needed to return it they needed to return an object that was basically value and set value. And you couldn't call it anything else. So it makes more sense for it to be an array so that you can call it anything that you want. So it's basically the same thing as that, but you can give it any name, which is nice. So you have your state. Another one that you have is use effect. And I'm going to show a version of this so this runs every single time. So every time I change the e.target.type value, which every time I type, it should change the document.title, which does not work here because I'm on Code Sandbox, but it will work when I click this. So it says hello from split, because I have document.title equals hello from city. And if I type London again, it's going to say hello from London. If just to show you that thing actually works, if I do this and I reload this page, I don't think I need to reload it, just to make sure. And I change something in here, it won't change because it will only run on that particular change, which is nothing, so it will never change. Beautiful. I think that's a hack to this day. Use context. So if you've never used context in React, it's like a really simple state management. And you basically create a context, and this means that you can access this anywhere in your application. So in this case, I could move this to another file, for example. So there is no, these two functions are not connected in any way. And in this function, I basically create, so I do this, and it changes this, and I'm just going to type split again. Cool. And so city and set city, and I call it use state as well. And I give it the value. So the provider basically sets the default value that you want to give. I don't know why my voice changed halfway. And I call the display function. And if I use context, basically what it does is it's going to look for this context, whatever this context is, whatever, yeah. I don't know. It's in whatever file it is, as long as you import it. So you basically export const. So if I put this in another file and I just do export const city context, and I put this in another file, first it's going to give me an error, but if I say city.js, and I put this in here, and I need to import React, that makes perfect sense. There we go. And so now I import the name I gave it, which was city context, from city.js. And if I reload, it still says I'm in split, and these two things are completely separated. And so in here, it means that I can use this context anywhere, and you will get me the value, and I can update it like this. So I can just say, set this value to something else, and it will re-render, and you can just completely put this in different files. So if I say lol, it still works. So it's the same thing as the other one, but you can see that in this way, we can use separate files. The old way of doing this was kind of weird. So there's a provider, which is the one that sets the value, and there's also a consumer, which was it worked you'd have to do something like this. I can show that, I think. So React, context, yes, maybe. Yes, that works. Oh my God, Chrome, what? We're using Firefox because of the open internet. React context. Cool, thanks Firefox, you're the best. So there was the provider, and there's also the consumer. So this is how you called it. So you get this props, children as props kind of thing, and you had to call it like this. So I can also just show you that in Chrome. And instead of using this, I can return something like this. And this is the city context. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to call city context, and I'm just going to call something like, well, that was too many. Hello, I am in. I'm just going to do this. And this is city, sorry. City. No, this is valid. I'm stupid. So this also works. So it's just a tiny little thing to make it look nicer, because I think this looks kind of weird. I don't like it. And that's it. Cool. Nice talk. So the next thing is use reducer. Who in here has used Redux? You honestly like Redux that much?
Yeah.
Because you look very into it. So he does tiny Redux now. This is great. No, this is actually really nice. So use reducer, like, because he was like very enthusiastic about it. He was like, who's used Redux? And he's like, damn, shit is good. That never mobs my hero. Yeah, so I'm just gonna show this code. You don't need to remember this or anything because I created. Oh god damn it, Sarah. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so Redux works a lot on reducers, which basically are switch statements on whatever you pass to it, which is nice. So this is basically tiny Redux, or what Redux should have been. But it got out of hand. So I have a count thing here, and I'm just gonna put this down a bit so you can read everything. So Prettier does this by default, so I'm gonna put this here. Cool. Okay, so I have 2 buttons and a value. So what I do is that when I say on click, instead of setting like set the state of this to like the value +1, I say like, okay, so I want to dispatch an action. So this gets the exact same thing as the use state. It gets a value, it gets the entire state, and it also gets a function. So use reducer, you pass it the reducer function that is here, and you also pass the initial state. In this case, it's going to equal 0 because that's the one I started with. And I say dispatch, and I want to dispatch an action of type decrement. So when I come here, I switch on action.type. So this thing gets the entire state and gets the action. So I switch on the type of the action, and if it's increment, it will run this, but it's not, so it's going to continue. And if it's decrement, it will check if the state.count is bigger than 0. And if it is bigger than 0, then it's going to decrement. It's going to say like -1. If it's 0, it's not going to do anything. Because if I remove this disabled and I try to click on it, it doesn't do anything. There we go. So button.onClick, and in this case I do increment. So when I do increment, so the state.count is going to be equal to the old one +1, and I can just do this. If you do something that doesn't match, so that's what the default is there for, it just won't do anything. So you can say like return, okay, so I'm just going to return state equals new or something. And if I click plus, it doesn't match anything, it's just going to say the count is new. So this is the basic idea of how Redux works, kind of. This is the part that I really like about Redux, in terms of looking at it, because I'm like, I haven't used Redux in a long time. I actually don't like it that much. I do like the reducers. Reducers are nice. So this is most of the functions that come with it. There's also some more. There's use layout, and there's a couple of more that are really for edge cases that are not that used. But I think these ones are the most useful ones. I think you can take a lot out of the reducer, because if you have a really huge component, you can put, I don't know why I keep looking at you. You can just put every change in a reducer, and you don't have to change the state or anything like that, and it's really nice. And also, I think I just want to say that by the end of the day, this is all a part of like if you like writing code this way or if you like classes. I prefer writing code this way. I think it's nice. But if you continue liking classes, they're not going to deprecate classes anytime soon. Probably not in like 5 years or something. And they're not even probably going to deprecate classes. So you can continue using classes at your will. Also, this is in beta. Be careful. That's it. It's probably not going to change a lot, but it may change. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to show. All of my slides are here, so it's new/react/way.netlify.com, and this has all of like the code sandbox links and everything. I can put this on the meetup site, I think, so that's cool. What, dude? What are you doing? Why you don't love me? Let's reload this page. Oh yeah, Chrome doesn't work. Oh, there we go. No, Chrome works back. Cool. So yeah, thank you, and I hope you like this React new way of doing things. So now we have pizza. Does anyone have any questions? No questions? Great. Yeah. Sexual was what was like I think 50 years.